This is the first in a series of videos looking at switching from Logic Pro to Cubase. I've been thinking about it for a little while, so I thought I would try it out and record the process. So let's get started. Okay, so this is the main page from Cubase. So let's quickly remind ourselves of what we have in Logic. So this is our Logic page that we're familiar with already. We've got our inspect section over here and our tracks area, transport and so on. So similar way, Cubase, we've got your tracks area here. There's an inspector section which we'll have a look at shortly, and you can filter your track types here as well. So if you only want to see instrument tracks, you can just see those and so on. There's some global settings, so you can deactivate all mutes, all solos, change your automation settings like read and write and so on. That's your global automation mode here. We've got our toolboxes, our grid modes, so you can have, I'm going to put this on relative grid because that's what I'm used to working with, and you can choose whether you want this on bar or beat, or use a quantized setting as well. Adapter zoom is like the smart setting on Logic. So basically what it does is it will change how it snaps to the grid depending on how far you're zoomed in or out. So if you're zoomed quite far in, it's assuming that you're going to make really detailed movements, and it will change the snap appropriately. So let's have a look at this. We've got our quantize here, which we'll come back to when I've recorded a drum pattern. So let's just load up a track here. So I was going to right click and then do add instrument track. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to look for superior drummer because that's just what I'm used to using. So you can just type in the name that you want to search for, which is great, and then just do add track. Okay, so we've got our familiar Superior Drummer 3 window. Let's just close that for a second. So over here on our inspector section, let me just jump back to Logic and let's remind ourselves what Logic looks like. So we've got our inspector section here, so we can see our EQ, the instrument, audio effects, sends, and the channel strip and panning and so on. Okay, so we've got similar things here. We've got record enable, mute solo, read and write for automation. We've got our volume, panning, delay settings, so you can move a track backwards and forwards in time in milliseconds. So here you can decide which MIDI inputs that track is going to respond to. So for example, I've got an 88 note keyboard, but also a very small keyboard with drum pads on it that I use when I'm programming drums. So I just leave that on all MIDI inputs, so it will listen to any of those devices that I use to record MIDI. Here, if I click here, you can activate the additional outputs that any software instrument may have. So I'm going to jump down a bit and leave these ones out for now. We'll come back to those in a later video. But if I click here, get this drop down menu, and then you can show your audio fader. So now that's looking a bit more like what we're used to seeing in Logic, because we get our track fader here, sorry. We don't have the main output, but what you can do is if you just click here on this E for edit channel settings, or you just do Control E. So you can edit all the channel settings for that track right here. So you pretty much got everything you need to mix that track from this window. So we've got all our inserts that we would have, so you can set those up here. You've got your channel strip, a detailed view of the equalizer, that's where your sends will be, and then you've got your fader and then your main stereo output. Something I didn't mention before, I mentioned we've got our toolboxes, but you've also, our toolbox, if I right click, that toolbox will come up wherever the mouse is on the screen. You can also change tools using the horizontal numeric keypad. You've got a range selection tool here, which is the equivalent of the marquee tool in Logic. But we'll come back to that when we've got our drum track recorded. So let's record our drum track.